Hello, welcome to Olio, my show. My name is Susan Rushton, and I need, as always, to explain what Olio means. One definition is that it's short for olla podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl, which I just get such a kick out of. It's a Spanish-Portuguese dish with essentially everything in the world in it. Chicken, chickpeas, pork in all its iterations, pig's feet and sausage, and what else? Pork, of pulled pork, say. Basically, and bacon and cabbage, carrots, beans, pig's ears, garlic and onions. As I said, essentially everything in the world except blackjack, gum, and applesauce. That's one definition. The other definition is that Olio comes in between the acts of a melodrama. So you might have somebody juggling, you might have somebody singing, you might have somebody doing a skit, and it's essentially none of those has anything to do with anything else, and none of them have anything to do with the melodrama. So in other words, it's apples, oranges, and a monkey wrench. So welcome to my monkey wrench. Today my guest is someone who deals with a product and a service that I have not paid attention to in decades. I used to, but I don't anymore. And the product and service is medical marijuana and marijuana in general and medical marijuana specifically, right?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, this is Richard Miller, who is with the American Alliance for Medical Marijuana and is Director of Education and Outreach for a Therapeutic Alternative, which is in Sacramento, and we don't have the website, but if you Google it, there it will be, and you'll find it. If you want to contact him, atapatientconsultant@gmail.com, and he also recommends the website and is involved with the organization behind it, letfreedomgrow.com. So, welcome to this show. Welcome,
Thank you, Susan.
Richard. Who are you? Why are you involved with medical marijuana?
Well, I started out on this 27 years ago. It was a journey that I didn't expect to be here today. I born and raised in the Bay Area. My uncle had come up with HIV, commonly known, and spreads into AIDS, and I saw how he was in a plight where he couldn't get any assistance. My own family ostracized him, and I saw how much of society was ostracizing him, and it was at that point that I decided that he needed help.
So they were ostracizing him because you have AIDS and it's your fault, this is your problem and we're not going to help.
Correct. Yeah. And even my own family, coming from a big Italian family, and they didn't necessarily believe in his lifestyle, they sent him over to his corner and told him to take care of it himself. And I felt really bad for him. And then he had developed what they call wasting syndrome, where he couldn't get the nutrients into his body to sustain his weight, and eventually would lead into CMV retinitis, which is a debilitating blinding disease, which would ultimately go into dementia. And I saw how there were no avenues out there to get medical treatment. This was early 1991, so there wasn't a lot known about HIV. I met a gentleman by the name of Dennis Perrone, which just recently passed in San Francisco, which was the grandfather to the medical cannabis industry, and started in San Francisco. And he enlightened me, along with Brownie Mary, which is Mary Rathcorn, on using edibles and cannabis and how efficacious it was to get weight on and to control pain, that I decided to move forward and do what I can into this industry. And I've been a part of it ever since.
So this is sort of like marijuana brownies,
correct,
but taken to another step, and not for fun and games, but to ease pain.
Yeah, an alternative medical treatment. A lot of pharmaceuticals don't work for a lot of patients or individuals. So I saw that it was very beneficial in controlling his pain. It also reduced the ocular pressure on his cornea. because he was going blind. And so it made it easier for him to reduce that reduction in that pressure to make his eyesight a little bit better.
So he was not smoking marijuana necessarily?
No.
No.
No,
But-
most of his treatment was done by edible form,
Okay.
which was all baked goods.
All right. And so I know that opioids given for pain before the OxyContin scandal have been. We aren't supposed to. People say, "Oh no, no, no! We don't want to get them addicted." No, 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 no. If they're in pain, yes, yes, it's too bad they're in pain, but we don't want to get them addicted. From what I gather, people who are in pain are in that much pain don't get addicted to morphine. It helps reduce the pain, and the same situation is the same situation true with medical marijuana?
What we're finding with opioids is their intended use is intended for a shorter period of time, 30, 60, 90 days, and the longer that you're on the opioids, the less likely they're going to be effective.
Right.
And then you're taking larger amounts and you're doubling up in your doses, and then the next thing you know, you've got a medical condition where now you've addicted to the drugs. And this has been a product by which the pharmaceutical industry encourages and has not really addressed.
Right.
We have found that in those states that do have medical marijuana laws or cannabis laws, that we have a 25% reduction in opioid overdose. So cannabis has shown a remarkable effect to the human anatomy and to the psychological aspects of the patients in treating that opioid addiction by getting them off the opioids and using cannabis as a more of an alternative method.
Okay. And you can. So do these people get, quote, stoned when they're on medical marijuana?
When you're taking any type of a chemical substance, and cannabis is considered a chemical substance as well, you are going to have an altering effect to the mind. However, when you're using it in a microdosing manner and you're only treating the symptoms, you alleviate the symptoms and you have less psychoactivity. So there is a way, there is a balancing mechanism. Microdosing is the most effective way in treating your symptoms, and they become very beneficial over time.
Yeah.
So
you saw this work for your uncle?
I saw it work for my uncle, and I saw it work for myself. Because I was not dying, or I did not have a terminal illness, but I did have a very serious accident. And I have been a spinal patient for the last 45 years, and did have an accident up here on Bell Road, right off the freeway. It left me incapacitated in 2006, and I fell into the same category that most individuals do. I went to the doctors, I followed the doctor's instructions, I took the medications they wanted me to take, and over time I found those medications to be less effective. And the next thing I knew, I was having organ failure, my hair was falling out, my skin was turning gray, my nails were yellow, I dropped down to 110 pounds.
Excuse me. And you do notice, don't you, that he is not, his hair is he has his hair, his skin is not gray, and you, granted, you did not see him walk in here, but he walked in here.
Yeah, just 5 years ago, I was using canes and walkers. I was having my sister wheel me around the house in an office chair because I was unable to walk, and I was looking at a wheelchair. And prognosis was not good. I was down to 110 pounds, and I was literally wasting away and dying. It wasn't until those patients came to me that I had been helping for years, essentially calling me a hypocrite because I wasn't following my own advice.
Hey, buddy.
So I realized how important it was, and it was at that point that I started using it more regularly myself.
Okay. And not because you thought getting stoned was a great idea,
no,
but because you had seen the medical the healing aspects of medical marijuana in others.
Correct.
And you're here to tell us that, hey man, it works. That's great.
It really does work. Once again, it becomes the most beneficial aspect is the microdosing. It is moving smaller amounts, which is more efficacious to the body over time. And you see a variety of things happen in a short period of time. It does take a little bit of time to catch up, to get off the other opioids and other medications. And it takes a little bit of time, but it can be done. I've been on pharmaceuticals for 45 years, off and on pharmaceuticals. And at the height of my pharmaceutical use just 6 years ago, I was at 450 pills a month.
And now?
I don't even so much as take an aspirin, and I have not taken an aspirin for almost 6 years. And I'm the healthiest and happiest I've ever been in my life. So there is proof that there is therapeutic uses, and it works for just about everybody.
Now, one of the reasons that is one of the reasons I've asked you on to talk about this. And another reason is, what is your response? And you must get this reaction. Yeah, man, great, medical marijuana, raw, power to the people, kind of thing. Do you get that?
I do get that. I get a lot of the stigma, a lot of the reefer madness. And, this has been going on for 80 years. But if people look back in time, this country was most profitable when we had hemp grown in our fields. And in fact, it was part of the tax structure of this country when this colony was created.
Yeah.
So we grew hemp, and we supported our queen over in England, and that was part of your tax duty. So I do get a lot of that. But keeping in mind, people forget, prior to 1940, 60% of all medicines had some sort of cannabis in them.
Wow.
So this is not something new to this country. It has been here. But because of Harry Hanslinger in the early 30s, creating the propaganda, which we commonly know as reefer madness, has brought it to the point we are today, that is put that stigma there that we need to remove.
And what do you tell parents? Do you speak to parents groups? Do you speak to schools? Do you speak these? I can imagine as devil's advocate having a group of people saying, yes, but you let this in, you're going to let this, you're going to let we're going to have all our students stoned in class.
Well, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the most important part is to educate the public. And there are some people out there you just can't educate. They just won't move past the stigma that they've been raised with. And that's fine. But over time, we will remove the stigma. It does take time. And the first part of doing this is educating people. So I will talk to anybody that will listen. Whether they want to hear it or not, I will listen. But there are some people I just cannot change their mind. And it usually comes down to them having a personal experience, either somebody in their family or a friend tells them how they've used this salve and it's made a remarkable difference on their arthritic condition. There are a variety of ways that people get educated, but I just do what I can. And yes, I am very concerned about the children out there getting access. But you must remember, it's the responsibility of the parents to make sure they control what their children are getting into. Children just cannot walk into a dispensary and get it. You must be 21 years of age or older to get it. And if you're a minor and your parent chooses to use medical cannabis, like we have a lot of children with autism and epilepsy and a variety of other conditions that use cannabis for their conditions, it's generally controlled by those parents. And that's the way it should be.
Okay. And usually, so what I'm getting from you, in addition to the fact that it's controllable and it's helpful, is that people are not usually people don't smoke marijuana to get the healing effects.
You know, the most efficacious way is going to be in a tincture form. It's going to be in an oral
Tincture?
tincture,
Okay.
and that is something that goes under the tongue. Your mucous membranes break it down, and your sublingual ducts absorb it and carry it throughout your body and take it to your receptors. That's a fast-acting approach. Tinctures usually take 20 minutes to an hour and a half to effect. Eating an edible such as a brownie or a cookie, absorb some sort of edible, takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours to effect. Smoking cannabis breaks the blood barrier to the brain immediately. Now the difference between these three application process, when you smoke it, it does break that blood barrier to the brain, but it only lasts an hour. With the tincture, it lasts anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, and with an edible, can last anywhere from 6 to 10 hours. However, when you're in severe pain and you need to have that pain removed immediately, then yes, smoking or vaporization is most efficacious because it breaks the blood barrier immediately to stop sending the negative receptors to the rest of the body. So if you're dealing with the pain that is so excruciating, yes, it's important to vaporize or smoke if necessary. It's not my first choice, but if you're in that serious of pain, you need to break that receptor activity immediately until either the tincture or the edible can kick in immediately.
Okay.
So there are different administration processes that are needed, although it's not my first choice to smoke it. However, it may be the only application that can break that blood barrier to the brain immediately.
Okay.
So.
Now, you've been promoting medical cannabis, medical marijuana for 40 years?
27, actually.
27, okay.
Yeah.
And I see this great, you're well dressed, so you make a living doing this.
My living is educating the people. And I do work at a permitted dispensary in Sacramento. I am the Director of Education and Outreach for Therapeutic Alternative. My first priority is to the patients and the responsible use of medical cannabis and understanding the efficacy of the medicine, as not only as well as the THC, but the CBD components as well. There are 114 cannabinoids. They all have a different approach and pharmacological effect to the body. And so I'm trying to educate patients on which is the most efficacious to their medical condition.
Wow. Okay.
It is quite extensive
and involved, and is it? I'm assuming it's exciting.
It's not so much as exciting as it is rewarding to see a patient not be able to walk in and then after 2 or 3 weeks, or even sometimes just 1 week, have them walk in and just say, hey, you've changed my life. My quality of life is back. I'm much happier. I'm engaged. My family's happy to be around.
I don't hurt.
I don't hurt. I'm not in pain. And so I find that to be the most rewarding. Helping people is what we're all supposed to be doing. And we have to have that compassion. I do take an altruistic approach to this because I believe it can help just about everybody. It is not a miracle drug, but one thing it does do is reduce the symptoms, and it gives a better quality of life, especially with those patients that are dealing with catastrophically or terminally ill conditions.
Okay.
So it's a very rewarding job.
Yes, it's clearly rewarding. So again, I'm talking to Richard Miller, who is with the American Alliance for Medical Marijuana. If you want to learn more, please email him at atapatientconsultant@gmail.com, or take a look online for a therapeutic alternative in Sacramento. So Richard, our the ACTV general manager is sitting behind the camera. Sometimes he sits, sometimes he stands. He's the one who gave me the heads up about you, because I think it was because you had been talking to the city council, Auburn City Council?
That's correct. That's another part of my job. I not only work on the local level, I work at the state level. I go to the Capitol. I try to educate everybody as much as possible. And as a resident here in Auburn, we do not have access. And in fact,
Access to medical cannabis.
medical cannabis, and we have no dispensary here. We have an ordinance that prohibits delivery. So essentially, we're in a rural community that does not have access, and because I am here for those patients most in need, most of those patients can't drive down to Sacramento. They're either elderly, or they're incapacitated, or they're homebound, or they just don't have the ability to get access. And we really do need access for our patients in this community. I deal with a number of patients in Sacramento that come down from Auburn, and the number one concern they always have is, why can't we have access in our community? And so it is a major issue here.
So that's what you were talking to the
Correct.
city council about. I was not at that meeting. What was the reaction? If you can be gentle.
They want no access in this community. I don't know if you're aware of it, Susan, or not, but I had the only dispensary here in Auburn, and it was shut down about 6 years ago.
Okay.
After I did get back up and on my feet, I realized the importance of having a dispensary in this location because patients just were not able to get access. Ultimately, that dispensary was shut down on a nuisance abatement, temporary restraining order. I have respect the city's decision, and I have not opened back up, but I have continued to fight. And the city council is not supportive of us moving forward, even though Mr. Kirby even is stated up there that he has patients that use it for cancer, and he understands the efficacy of the medicine for cancer patients and nausea. So I find it hard when we have a city council that understands it, but doesn't allow it, and doesn't even allow delivery services.
And you can understand it because it's a political football, political hot glove. There would be a lot of people up in arms, and a lot of people apparently, from what I gather, and not. The problem with marijuana as a topic is. There's, as a Puritan, I'm a Puritan because I say I've got to do all this stuff. I've got to do this and this and this and this, and not rest. It's puritanical to be against marijuana because it's the image we have of it is solely for fun.
Yes, correct.
But at the same time, so is alcohol, often solely for fun, and Fast Fridays is also solely for fun.
Yeah. Fast Fridays, you walk down the street, you see everybody drinking alcohol and everything, sitting right there in their chairs. You do see some people using cannabis out in the street. They should not be. That should be done in the privacy in their own home, and that is mandated by state law. But as a Puritan, you must also look at, this is a natural source that has been given to us. It has been granted. I don't really like to bring religion into it, but it is a flower that was produced by God and given to the people. And in its natural form, it can be very therapeutic. And even eating it raw has a very therapeutic effect. That is called THCA, which means it has not been decarboxylated or heated up. So if you were to eat a gram of that every day, it has great therapeutic effects, but has no euphoric effects whatsoever. Does not change your psyche at the brain, but it has great inflammation properties. We know inflammation is the root cause to all illnesses, and everybody has it. So we can reduce that inflammation. You're going to have a much more therapeutic effect to your body, and you're going to have a better lifestyle, and you're going to be able to keep off those conditions where you normally wouldn't be able to if you didn't have something with an anti-inflammation property to it. So there is a lot more that needs to be learned. It is not researched enough, even though prior to 1940 we know that 60% of all medicines had cannabis in it. So the research is there, it's just a little bit old, and I think as we move forward as a society and we remove that stigma, we will be doing much better as citizens of this country. So.
Okay. In addition to investigating a therapeutic alternative, how can a person learn more about medical marijuana?
Well, there are numbers of sites out there. You know, the best resources out there, of course, are Let Freedom Grow, which, as the state director for American Alliance for Medical Cannabis, I see this every day, and people want to know where they can find the information out. So you can go to Let Freedom Grow. That is one website. I also am a co-director for Americans for Safe Access Sacramento, which entails Placer County as well. Americans for Safe Access website can be looked up online. Also, there is information to medical studies on there, and you can look up Americans for Safe Access and look at Cannabis Critical Review document, which will give you supporting information both on the positive and negative effects of cannabis, and it is the most detailed, and it will address a number of medical conditions that people can start looking and research to find their benefits for cannabis for their own use.
Fascinating. And I must admit that when Phil told me that what you were involved with, I anticipated some sort of even a hint of stonedness. I anticipated a hint at least, but I'm not getting it, and I'm impressed and pleased and gratified.
That's funny. I took 2 capsules this morning, but the ones that I took were CBDs, which is cannabidiol, which is non-euphoric. It is a great anti-inflammation. It is a great spasmodic medication, and it does not give you any psychotropic effects whatsoever.
Great.
But I could not walk without it.
Yeah. Okay. Richard, it's been fascinating. So thank you very much for being my guest, and you have all the information you need. If you need more information, go to a therapeutic alternative online and look it up. Thank you very much for being my guest, Richard.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will see you later.